I was just going to say on the Jae Crowder front, we did have that whole thing pop off where somebody on Twitter had posted about a reunion and then Jae Crowder liked the tweet.
Yeah.
So there might be some interest from him. Are there any additional free agents you guys are kind of keeping your eye on? I know, Gerald, from your reports, we're still kind of watching and monitoring the Kyle Lowry rumors and interest that the Suns have shown there. Anybody else that you kind of have your eye on as a potential?
I'll go ahead, G.
No, I think for me, I would be looking for a shooting wing at this point. I think you look at the bench unit, and yes, you brought Damian Lee back. I think that helps. If Bol is able to shoot as well as he did from three last year, this upcoming season, that would help a lot too. But in terms of that second unit, you really have a lot of non-shooters, especially if they bring back Josh Okogie, which is what they're trying to do. Like you're looking at Dunn, you're looking at Iguodaro, Plumlee, pretty much everyone coming off your bench except for Monty Morris and Royce O'Neal or Grayson Allen, whichever one you bring off the bench. You don't have a ton of shooting. You have Ryan Dunn, who's a defensive-minded wing, a big-size wing, but you could use another guy in that same tier. There are a couple of options. Like we've talked about some of these guys before, but like Cedi Osman, Haywood Highsmith, Lamar Stevens, even Jae Crowder. I feel like Jae Crowder is maybe a little bit too over the hill at this point, but like some of those guys, any of those guys, I would consider making a roster move for, freeing up a roster spot to try and bring them aboard.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm really hopeful about Kyle Lowry. I think that would make a lot of sense to have insurance behind Monty and his experience and what he does for a basketball team. So Kyle Lowry's the obvious guy. There are a couple guys. You nailed it, G. I'm intrigued with Jae Crowder. And not so much. He may be over the, past that line. The one thing I do know about Jay is that he'll shoot the three ball. And he'll bring toughness. Mm-hmm. And if there's one thing I think this team is lacking, is that one guy that can kind of set the tone, that is willing to do those little things that you need, that you don't have to have throughout an entire basketball game, but in spurts can really shift the momentum. Jay's a tough guy. The crowd, this fan base loves him. I know he enjoyed his time here. And then wishful thinking. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say on the Jae Crowder front, we did have that whole thing pop off where somebody on Twitter had posted about a reunion and then Jae Crowder liked the tweet. Yeah. So there might be some interest from him. As far as I know, he might be a little over the hill. He did average 35% from deep last year on 3.3 attempts per game. So
yeah, and I think go ahead. Sorry,
not terrible.
Yeah, I think in the role that he would come into this team would be much different than the role he played before he left. And so for the little bit amount of time that you're probably going to be depending on Jae Crowder, I think he's still got a little bit in the tank. And then a guy that I'm wishful thinking, I don't think the Suns can get this guy. But I'm monitoring what's happening with Saddiq Bey. They've always been interested with a guy with Saddiq Bey, loved him in college, and I can't quite understand what the issue is with him right now, but he's a guy that's out there, and if all the money runs dry and he has to make a decision, I'd be really happy if a guy like Saddiq Bey could find his way over there.
Look, give me Kyle Lowry as that second or third guard off the bench, depending on how Monte looks. You need that backup to the backup, like we were talking about. And then, look, I know it's been a joke, but if we're going to wade into the Jae Crowder water, I'd rather call up the Bulls and go, hey, can we interest you in a Nasir Little for a Torrey Craig, kind of thing, because you'll get the same kind of attitude, a little bit younger. Obviously, he's familiar here. If I got to go that route where I'm going to retread guy at that wing, that's probably who I call first, is the Bulls about that. And look at that. Yeah, Saddiq Bey would be nice. Do I think it's going to happen? No. I do think you need somebody as a wing behind Ryan Dunn, just in case you get in a game where the defense isn't what you need. You need some offense and you need a microwave kind of guy. I kind of wonder if Jalen Bridges, again, I don't want to rely on rookies this month, but could Jalen Bridges be a guy that could wind up coming in and playing that offensive wing backup to Ryan Dunn, where you can mix it up and get a little something out of him? I think they want to see that. They want to look at him. Obviously, in Summer League, they have him on a two-way deal, so you can see a little bit in the G League if necessary, but that's where I would look.
I think Cedi or a Haywood Highsmith type would be maybe a little too optimistic for me. So maybe like a Lamar Stevens would work. If you're looking for a backup point guard, like we've talked about Lowry as well, if you strike out on him and you feel like you need some depth behind Monte Morris, I believe Spencer Dinwiddie and Dennis Smith Jr. are both available, whether you'd be able to get them for vet minimums. Again, we're still kind of waiting for this market to play out and dry up, so guys have to take those vet minimum deals, but either one of those would provide you with some length, some defense there at the point of attack. And if you're not comfortable with your center rotation, or you view Iguodaro as more of a forward than a center, Daniel Theis is still out there, and he's one of the best positional centers, like switchable perimeter defensive centers that you're going to be able to get on the market. So I think all of those guys would be good. Like Cedi for me would be the best case scenario if you were to, cut David Roddy or trade him into somebody's cap space or whatever. But yeah, and you could potentially try to sell the Bulls like, hey, David Roddy's young, like that trade works 1-for-1. Maybe we throw a second round pick on top, but they do have options there. Even if Josh Okogie winds up taking that 15th roster spot, there are still some decent names out there that are worth considering.